You're listening to APMG Radio with my special guest, Valerie MacLeod. Before the break, we were talking about two of the symptoms that are involved in the article, 9 Symptoms of Highly Ineffective Leaders. So, Valerie, for those people that missed our previous show, tell us again why you chose to write this article.
Well, I've been coaching for quite a few years, and I realized there was a pattern of what I was seeing in the areas I was coaching, and I noticed there was often similarities and things that would come up more than once, and so I started pulling some of those ideas together, and I thought it would be useful for leaders as well as human resources people to know when to call in a coach. What are some of the common symptoms of people that can be coached, and just to help them know whether they should call someone like me in or not.
And tell us again how we can get a copy of the article.
Yes. People can go to my website, ValerieMacLeod.com, and click on Coaching on the main page, and then they can download the 9 Symptoms of Highly Ineffective Leaders.
From that article, do you have one that really stands out to you that you think is extremely important and common amongst leaders?
I think the most common thing is communication. And in sales, there's a saying that says, always be closing, ABC. And in leadership, I think it should be, always be communicating, ABC. And leaders cannot over-communicate. It's almost impossible to over-communicate. Leaders need to tell people things more than once. It's usually 4 to 7 times. People need to hear things. People need to be told things in more than one way, be told things in more than one medium. They need to hear things often. They need to have their leaders make connections for them. Leaders need to be communicating over and over and over again.
Who would you say your typical client is that you work with?
I tend to work with 2 kinds of clients. One is somebody who's already been a leader for a while, and that person wants to fine-tune their skills a little bit, maybe improve on stuff they're already good on, and maybe get an advantage over others, a competitive advantage in moving up the organization. Or I work with people who've been recently promoted. They could have been a leader previously, but they've been promoted to a new level of leadership, and they want to improve in their skills, and they sometimes need more information, more of the knowledge, those mini education sessions I give, than people who've been in leadership for a longer time.
How would you say a coaching session typically looks like? What does the coaching session involve when you work with them?
Well, the first session is always different than the others. So in the first session, we make sure that we're setting ourselves up for working well together, and we do 5 things. We talk a little bit about the leaders themselves, that person's style, their person's skills. We may do some assessments, pull on some assessments the person's already done. The second thing we do is we talk about what happens during the coaching sessions, what happens between the coaching sessions, who does what. The third thing we would do after understanding their skill and talking about the coaching sessions is review any feedback. Often there's a feedback from their leader, their peers, their employees. Let's take a look at some of that feedback. And then we choose what area of leadership, 1 or 2 of them, that they'd like to focus on during our coaching over the next 3 to 6 months. And then together, based on all of the stuff we talked about, their style, what's going to be happening at the sessions, the feedback, and the area they want to focus on, we actually create a tool that shows progress in the coaching sessions. And that's pretty unique to me because, as you know, I have a mathematics background and I have a business degree as well. And I think that coaching is not just a conversation. Coaching needs to add value to the organization. So we actually create a tool to show that progress is happening.
Excellent. And how long typically can that session last? I know that obviously it depends on the individual and it depends on what you're working on. But overall, what is sort of the average amount of time it's spent working with a client and coaching?
The first session is usually 60 minutes to 90 minutes. Subsequent sessions are about an hour. And in that hour, the structure is always the same. We have impact, issue, insight, and initiative.
I'm writing that down as you say it, Valerie.
So, impact, issue, insight, and initiative. So we start with impact. We start with what gain have they had since the last time we were together, what successes have they had. That starts things off positively and shows that this person's making progress, because often they don't see the progress. It's small, incremental steps. And by meeting me or talking to me every month, something like that, they can see that they've made this leap of progress. So after impact, we talk about issue. And that's what the person's facing right now, their challenge or their stress. I call it what's in your face. So what's in your face right now? What's bothering you? What do you want to talk about? What do you want to help resolve? And this is where we spend the majority of our time. After we walk through, maybe a tool or using some new ideas on the issue, the person usually comes with an insight. And that insight is a new perspective, some kind of learning that's come as a result of talking the issue through. And finally, people need to take action. So there's initiative. What actions are they going to take to resolve that issue that we spent time talking about? And there's a quote that I often use that is, when all is said and done, there is much more said than done. So I don't want to just talk about stuff. We need to have the leader take some action, to try something different, to step out of their comfort zone and try something new.
When a person starts working with you, and you made a great point, and I think this is common in general life, sometimes we don't notice those changes that are taking place in our own life because it's hard to step out of ourselves and observe. Are there ways that clients can help with that insight part of it? Sorry, not insight. That would be the impact. When are they able to record it independently that will help further their progress in the session?
So sometimes they can use that tool that we talked about, and in that tool we discuss what kind of leader they want to be in the future. So they have an idea of the future of them as a great leader. So we talk about their progress towards that. So it's not this general kind of discussion about you're getting better. It's you are actually making progress towards that person or that ideal we've come up with. The other way they can see their impact is often they report back to me. Somebody will send me an email and say, I just had a great discussion with so-and-so. Thanks for the insight you gave me. I wasn't expecting it to go that well.
Do you have a favorite client that you've worked with? Or I'm sure there are many, but we've spoken about your work as a fairy godmother in business. You had mentioned off-air that there was a story with regards to management in a way that you were able to help change. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, you called me the fairy godmother of stories, and I think that most people think there's a management fairy in organizations. So when someone gets promoted, they go to sleep that night, and somehow this magic management fairy comes at night when they're sleeping and sprinkles leadership knowledge and skills on them. And then the next morning they wake up and they can do the job as the new leader. Well, we know that's not true. There is no management fairy. People need assistance, they need help, they need guidance, they need a coach, they need training. And so I love it when people think there's a management fairy, because then they have to call in a coach, because there really isn't one.
What part of the coaching do you really enjoy? Is there a particular stage that, that's your favorite part to get to with those clients?
I think discussing the issue is always my favorite, because I never, ever know where it's going to go. I remember working with one client, and I thought her and I were going to be talking about improving communication with suppliers and customers. We had discussed that in an email the previous day, figured that's what was going to be the issue that was facing her in the impact, issue, insight, initiative structure. And when I got there had been an announcement that very morning that was a surprise to everyone, that the president of over 20 years was leaving the organization. All of a sudden, this person was in shock. Her staff were in shock. So instead of talking about communication, we went right into managing change. So I pulled out a model for change. What's normal? What can you expect when people go through change? Where is she? Where were her staff? How could she help her staff through change, understand it better? How could she help herself through change? Because, of course, she was going through it as well. All of a sudden, this person that had been part of their work life for 20 years was leaving. So she got really good feedback from the sessions that she had with her staff talking about change. And she told me that she had a really good discussion with that president before he left.
Do your clients ever mention how working with a business coach actually can impact or affect their personal life as well? Do you ever hear that sort of feedback?
Well, everything that we talk about can be implemented outside of work as well. So I usually work for organizations that pay me. So we keep focused on adding value to that organization. But lots of people talk about having better communication with their teenagers or having a better communication with their spouse because of the communication model that we talk about can easily be applied inside of the office or outside.
Now, for listeners out there who have definitely, that their ears are perked up at these stories that we've been speaking of and the article that you wrote, tell us a little bit about the types, once again, of clients that you can work with and the different types of organizations that you have previously worked with and who you would like to continue to work with.
I work with organizations that make money, that are not-for-profit, that are government. I work for not-for-profits. I work with anybody who's a leader. So if people actually want to get an idea of some of the organizations I work with, they can go to my website, ValerieMacLeod.com. There's a list of some of the clients I've worked with and some of the areas I've worked on. They can go there and find out some of those big areas that I discuss with people, giving difficult feedback and managing conflict and thinking more strategic. All of those things are on the website as well.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Valerie, for joining us today. And I'm glad that we got to cover the whole article and get through those last two as well and continue on other subjects within your industry. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Lucy.
You've been listening to APMG Radio with my special guest, Valerie MacLeod. This show and many others can be found at allpromediagroup.com. Thank you all for joining us today. I'm Lucy, and you've been listening to APMG Radio.